a client of mine did a private poll for the region about regional priorities. What was number 1? Housing, affordability, homelessness. What was number 2 by 5 points? Transportation planning. It is a big issue. It's a different issue in different parts of the region, depending on where you are and what motivates you, but it is an issue everywhere. This got a lot of publicity in Vancouver. Up to now, I think most of the thinking has been done in big terms, not about people. It's been about traffic flows. It's been about hectares and densities and setbacks. And it's been about tons of CO2, etc. I think that it's time, and I think it's proper to turn it on its head for a while and talk about individuals. And the first concept then is one of personal mobility. And that's how people are able to get around. So it brings in land use, and that is another concept that is being developed, but people need to start to think about it. The next is a definition of sustainable transportation. I thought since that was the topic, I should look for one. And this is a Weatherby one, actually. It's in the 2003 CRD, Regional Growth Strategy. It is also in the 2010 Winnipeg University Sustainable Transportation Institute. And it's also on a website from Waterloo. Transit-oriented development. People heard of that? Yep. Good. Where people are designing buildings and the land use together. So light rail transit is another thing that I think is worth defining. Light rail is somewhere between a trolley bus and a heavy rail car, and the technology is coming on so fast. France is pioneering different technologies. The first overlay on that would be the valuable lands for our ecological future. And that's the blue and the green system that 14 environmental groups worked with the CRD to create. And that protects the forests and the water. The other protected area that you would overlay on that is the ALR, which is necessary for our food security, as well as a whole lot of other things. And then we can put our settlement patterns, and on the settlement patterns, we can put our current travel patterns. This will be our islandtransformation.org's concept of a system that fits the biophysical and the travel patterns we have now, and shows as well the bus exchange stations, because there will need to be a bus system that supports a transit system, or it doesn't work, and there needs to be a walking system and a biking system that feeds all into it. Now we'll pause and think, why would we have rail as opposed to other things? And there are some unique features that are increasingly coming to light as more and more places put rail in. And we've divided them here between environmental reasons, land use reasons, riderships, investment, and cost. So we'll just work through those. I think guys told us the big picture, but here in the CRD, 1.8 million tons a year come out, and the amazing thing to me is more than half of that is for transportation. It is a big chunk, and that doesn't include the ferries, the harbor, or the airport, which is another big number. So this is a pure lift from the TransLink policy shop in Vancouver, and I give them credit. They said to meet the kind of targets for greenhouse gas reductions that the province has adopted means better vehicle technology, all of the electric vehicles and so on that are on the horizon and here right now, doubling transit ridership, expanding the bus and rail networks and their services. Here's the land use link, higher densities along the routes, and as well as offering a better service, you need some incentives, whether it's passes or taxation or some way of inducing or giving a bigger benefit to the traveling public. This is a rapidly changing graph. This current one is from Hydro-Quebec, but it just gives you, based on the technology of the moment, how much an SUV puts into the atmosphere compared to any of the public transit options. It's more than 10 times. So it is a huge number. Now we'll talk a little bit about the land use and the efficiency of rail over car transportation. And you can see the highway takes a huge swath, and rail takes a 66-foot or less corridor. And this matters when you're trying to preserve agricultural land, when you're trying to concentrate development where it feeds off each other. And that's the sort of rural suburban model. The next picture shows in cities. And this is something that I had to have put to me. But if people are familiar with Fort and Douglas, we've got bus congestion at the moment. And that's because there are so many of them. And it took a guy from Portland, it's a Yogi Berra saying, but with a rail car, you start it and it goes through the intersection and you're clear. The same number of passengers in buses will block 3 intersections to make the same number of passengers go down the street. This is from St. Louis, where they put a new long transit rail system in, and they got 80% people out of their cars to get into it. But it's St. Louis, but it could have been Jersey City, it could have been Salt Lake City, it could have been Calgary. And they all are finding that people will leave cars to get into the convenience, the quietness of rail. Now, here is the economic point. This is from Portland, and it shows the patterns of building before they had their streetcar. And before they had the streetcar, most of the building avoided the arterial roads, 3 blocks away or less. You wanted to be away from it. Now, after they brought in their streetcar and the zoning that supported density along the line, they had more than half of it appearing on the same block. So this is how they managed to, on the one hand, densify their city, and B, support their economy and their transportation system. Now, in Seattle, people learned about that. And the new Seattle streetcar system is 65% financed by the people who own the buildings and the businesses along the line. The important bit here in comparing buses and electric rail vehicles are that the vehicle life of an electric vehicle is 40 years compared to 15. It doesn't need nearly so much maintenance. Over a life cycle of 40 years, the costs are about the same, while new ridership is much, much more on rail. The final section here is how to make it happen. And we have been submerged with studies, starting in 1993, and then in 1996. Then our own organization commissioned Todd Lipman's Research Institute to do a comparison, taking the layout of 18 kilometers and taking the elements of the CRD regional growth strategy, which was then emerging, and putting the two together. And he did a triple bottom line analysis, which was a novelty then, with economic, social, and environmental, and quantitative and non-quantitative items. And he concluded that the net benefits of rail plus the CRD's growth strategy recommendations gave twice as many benefits as a bus HOV, a pure light rail, a road pricing, and gave 4 times as many benefits as road improvements, where the benefits were in fact negative. The provincial transit plan was a bold move in January of 2008, and it set up $14 billion to be spent on transit. But I think, to be kind, it needs to be tweaked, and maybe you could say it needs even more than that, because there's no connection between the targets and the results. And now BC Transit is doing a rapid transit study, and it's right now working on corridors and considering technology. It hasn't produced results really that are firm. And this is Todd Lipman's latest study to show that, in fact, in cities with well-developed rapid transit systems, you, the taxpayers, are better off to pay $375 in fares and taxes more, and you'll get $1,000 back in savings. And here's what you can do. I would say, participate. Yeah.